Hi, I'm Sophie.
Hi, I'm Paul, and we are
SP Film Viewers. Hello everyone. I know this sounds strange hearing my voice first. Maybe we should do it more often. However, we have actually come to a film that we've tried to persuade Paul to see for a long time. And a little bit of girl power, I think we've brought Paul down. And
begrudgingly, yeah, I suppose, in a way. The film in question is Top Gun.
And I know I'm still or something to the danger zone. Is that
Highway to the Danger
There we go.
Zone. That's I'd say, without seeing the film, I've got to admit that is a good song.
It is. So already I know that that's on there. So I don't know why I know it. I just do. It's just one of those pop culture things that's there.
Right.
We will also say that Paul has a bit of an issue with Tom Cruise, and that's why we've had to break him down and we've had to bring somebody else along on this adventure with me. I couldn't do it on my own. So I feel like we're going to end up probably ganging up on Paul a little bit.
Maybe, yeah. So, the person who will be joining us when we obviously come back after watching the film is a work colleague of mine. She's involved with Food Fight Studios, who I work for.
Woo woo! The best Food Fight Studios animation and illustration company out there. Let's just say that. Obviously, you know, not the fact that I get paid to say that, really. That should be you saying it. Exactly.
And she's a big fan of this film. So, obviously, she'll have maybe her biased insight into what she really likes about it and everything.
And you will have your biased insight of the fact that you hate Tom Cruise and you've got an issue with him. And you need to...
I'm going open-minded, of course. I've got to.
I know I'm hypocritical because, if it was an Adam Sandler film, it's the same thing. But I'm sure they're going to come around for me at some point.
Ones that not stupid, but more serious. Anyway.
So, Paul's putting his big boy shoes on. He's going to watch Top Gun and he's going to love it.
Well, that remains to be seen or heard.
Even though I haven't seen it either, so I can't really complain. Yeah. But I have been saying I want to see Top Gun, and Paul has been the one putting the brakes on it. It's even in the Criterion movies.
No, it isn't.
No, what's it?
It's 4K.
4K. There we go.
Yeah. But anything these days can be in 4K. To be honest.
No, but when we saw it when we saw it as 4K, not anything was just 4K. So there must be a reason that it thought it was worthy enough to be in 4K at that time.
Maybe, but
so
I don't know.
Do you want to tell me what Top Gun's about? All I know is it's Tom Cruise on a motorbike,
and it's to do with planes.
Yeah. There's a sad bit at the end. I think.
And there's also the other featured song is Take My Breath Away.
I didn't know that.
Is as part of it as well, so that's one of the more iconic. That's for some reason, but I would have thought Danger Zone was more badass America type of thing. But anyway, the little synopsis that Google says: after losing his friend, top pilot Maverick is given a second chance to redeem himself. He struggles to be at his best and also gets romantically involved with his civilian instructor, Charlie.
Yay, it's a romance! We haven't had one of those in a while.
And we did, Breakfast at Tiffany's and High Fidelity, technically. This is action adventure.
You've just made me watch 4 Indiana Jones movies.
Yeah, I suppose.
So I class that as a while now, since we've had to have a bit of a break, haven't we, as well?
That's true, yeah. But interesting that looking on this on the Google webpage, and it says it's not rated very highly on the scoring on Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic.
What are you like?
Which is kind of like, Okay. Maybe is it just a cult thing then? It's not like this is the. I mean,
Paul's like, oh, I've got a leg to stand on here, and they're not
perhaps.
rating it that high.
I'm not expecting a masterpiece from something like it's not really deep. I think it's going to just be like an action.
No, you've got to take it for what it is, I think.
Film, like things like Con Air and stuff. Like people love that film or whatever, and it's just hokey action kind of stuff. But it's just
don't know what it is.
It's a good one.
Is it?
Yeah,
I haven't seen it.
No. Anyway, right, we will be back in due course, and we'll find out how good it is.
Gentlemen, you are the top 1% of all naval aviators. The elite, best of the best. We'll make you better. Fly at least 2 combat missions a day, 10 classes in between, and evaluations of your performance. Now, in each combat sequence, you're going to meet a different challenge. Every encounter is going to be much more difficult. We're going to teach you to fly the F-14 right to the edge of the envelope, faster than you've ever flown before. More dangerous.
And we're back in the danger zone. And we are not alone, as we have a Top Gun fanatic joining us. I'd like to welcome Sharon from Food Fight Studios, one of my colleagues. Hello.
Hi, Paul. Hi, Sophie.
Hello. I'm so glad to have you on this because I feel like we're going to have to bring Paul kicking and screaming into loving this film because you have a bit of a hatred towards Tom Cruise. I don't know if you know this, Sharon.
What is the hatred, Paul? Where does it stem from?
I don't really know. It's just one of those things that his just whole demeanor is just really irritating to me, and there's just something about him that I don't particularly like. I can't really pin down. He doesn't like hurt me in any way, shape, or form, as such. But I don't know. So I have a bit of a stigma when it comes to watching like any of his films. I'm a bit like I can tolerate him to a degree, but it's just I just don't have a particular liking to him for whatever reason. I'm not sure.
So there are no Tom Cruise movies, even though like the stigma of Tom Cruise as a person and then his character in a movie. There are no Tom Cruise movies that you like. You're like
I don't
adamant about this.
No, I mean I can off the top of my head. Things that I can really think I've seen him in are Vanilla Sky, which I don't remember much about, to be honest, and this last film Stanley Kubrick ever made, which was Eyes Wide Shut, and that was with Nicole Kidman. I think he was married to her at that point, I believe, but again, don't really remember much about that, to be honest. Really, it was a bit long and boring, and he was in it, so. Yeah.
Well, I have to say, Sophie and Paul, just to relieve you of your hatred towards Tom Cruise. I'm not a Top Gun fanatic because of Tom Cruise, and I actually get really defensive when people want to make it about that, And so I hope that we can make this review more about the film than Tom Cruise.
Oh, absolutely.
I am also like. It's not about Tom Cruise. Like, it's not that I have a crush on Tom Cruise. At the time when it came out in the 80s, I was, a child, and it was a very novel, like, concept of this, like, action thriller adventure movie. And so it wasn't a romantic interest, in Tom Cruise as the star of Top Gun. It was more like, that adrenaline, and things like that. So now as an adult and all the movies he's done, which seems to be all like clones of Top Gun in some capacity, like it just keeps getting more and more extreme, which I can't imagine what's going to happen in the sequel, 30 years later. It's going to be extreme overload. It's not about Tom Cruise, it's more about the movie in its period of time for what it represents and how it's somewhat iconic still 30 years later. So yeah, let's get to kicking and screaming to love this movie, because I would like that. So tell me what you don't like about it.
Yeah. Well, we know one thing, but to be fair, Sharon, I think that is probably the main gripe I might have with the film, really, because I like looking at some of the cinematography and the camera angles that they've got when they're on the jets and everything flying through the air. Those are pretty impressive, I've got to say.
Mm-hmm.
Like you kind of you don't maybe not feel a need for speed, but to a famous line from the film, but it does feel like quite exciting to be like looking at how, like, thinking, like, especially like how did they manage to get those aerial shots, and the speed obviously they must be going at to be even having somebody maybe manning the camera doing that, or is that just letting the camera do its work kind of thing and just hoping for the best? I don't know. God knows how many takes he might have had to do if that was the case, type of thing. So it's quite impressive in that regard. And like some of the backdrops as well. Obviously, you've got like sunsets as well as some of the planes are flying along as well. That's quite quite amazing, really, in how that comes across. So I'll give the film that in terms of cinematography. What about you, Soph? You got anything?
I definitely think the storyline for me, I always go for a story. And I think this kind of works quite well. Obviously, Tom Cruise, Maverick is your main lead, but then there is some really good side characters. Like Goose is one of those lovable characters. If anything, I prefer Goose over Maverick, actually, to be fair.
He's just like a family man. So,
yeah. And there's obviously moments where it tugs at your heartstrings as well, or not in your case. But it did for me. And I felt certain points and moments within the film. It wasn't overly predictable either. So that works well for me, where I kind of know the ending. Obviously, we get a romance, which clearly you're hoping for. But overall, the action, the speed of it, I think was quite enjoyable. Also, I don't know anything about air pilots or anything like that, or fighter jets or anything like that. So I was like interested when we had the pilot at the front and then the person sat in the back, like the watcher. I was like, what are they doing?
I thought, to be honest, I thought they were all in like their own separate planes, like in maybe Star Wars or something, where it's kind of like, you know, they're all on comms, like communications, and like they're all just in their own little planes flying along or something. I didn't realize that there's actually one person in the front and two in the back. So like looking at the way the cameras was going, and thinking, okay, where there's only like 3 planes in the sky, why is there these other people coming to talk? So that was quite interesting to know that was actually a thing that I didn't know. So I learned something there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fighter jets might have been, you know, 1-seaters, 2-seaters, and things like that. And then you talk about the cinematography of it, and again, like being produced in the 80s, where CGI was not very relevant or widely used. And then you have to have I believe, you know, in my limited research on this topic, it was actual naval aviators in the U.S. Air Force that allowed this to happen. And so they set up all the cameras with the film crew and everything. And so the actual fighter pilots were not the actors. It was real people and in the airplanes with all the cameras and everything. And so none of that was CGI. And this was before, you know, the high intensity cameras like GoPros and things like that. So how to have those camera angles and at those speeds with those shots was completely impressive for cinematography, for sure. And again, as an early adopter of the film as a child, I didn't see it for that. But now, as in our industry and everything, I am saying, like, how impressive to convey that, like, emotion and that adrenaline and that feeling of what that role in this industry goes through. And again, you know, storyline. So if I will say, I was sort of oblivious to it as a child of the 80s, and now having my husband is from Poland, so he grew up in Cold War Poland, and I knew of the Cold War. I was trained for air raids and nuclear attacks in grade school, where it was a potential. And so the storyline of like what was happening in the 80s, of like this, you know, juxtaposition of what other nations were presenting to America, and that that risk and what soldiers and pilots were training for, and having these random scenarios of possible, threats of these MiG air carriers in lands that needed to be protected, then what did that mean at the time, and what did civilians not even know could have been happening that needed to be protected? And it was day in the life of a naval aviator, and we just were normal civilians appreciating it. So
in terms of when they're obviously they're doing all this the training at the beginning, because I was under the assumption, I guess a lot of assumptions, considering like it's been so long since I should have seen this film. The fact that like I thought the story was kind of like from the beginning that Tom Cruise's Maverick loses a friend like in a situation, and it's kind of shaking him up or something, perhaps at the beginning, and then he's trying to like come round to be a good fighter pilot again, and that they were kind of like not just training but also going up against like enemies in between, but that's more like at the very end of the film, isn't it? So it's kind of like right, this isn't a game anymore, this is actually like a real situation. You've kind of graduated from Top Gun, which again I didn't even know that was. I guess I just assumed that they were already a part of this elite group or whatever. So I had a lot of misconceptions about what the film was going, which is kind of like, oh, okay. I thought I know exactly what's going to happen here, like with certain scenes and stuff. So I guess that kind of took me by surprise in a good way. Not too predictable, I suppose.
So that's good, because really for you, I think you were already thinking you knew the film, so you was writing it in your head, thinking you weren't going to like it. So this has taken a lot of persuasion, and I think probably baby-faced young Tom Cruise was one of the downfalls, I think, of why you wouldn't watch it initially.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad we've come over that, because it's one of those things where actually, if we look at the film itself, when it first starts, you get the song, which I knew, and I hadn't even seen the film, Danger Zone. I knew that was linked to Top Gun. It's just one of those iconic pop culture things that you just know that song is Top Gun. And then it's the music starts, you see them working on the plane or the fighter jets, and you just get that kind of adrenaline within the first get-go. Because it was quite funny for me that it literally opened with that, because I didn't know if it was going to be an ender, but it's one of those songs that does get drip-fed.
Yeah, they play it a couple of times, don't they? Like, what's it, the Take My Breath Away song as well, that kind of gets almost like a musical moment between Maverick and Charlotte Blackwood's character. Yeah, they kind of like every time they're kind of like having a moment, that's always kind of creeps in to signify that they're kind of like having like a touching moment, or they're gonna get it on or whatever in that weird scene, I'd say. That was a bit, I didn't really need to see the tongues still going on.
Oh, Paul.
Sorry.
But the whole I think story, and it's more to the point of, when you dissect it from a storyline standpoint, it's representation of growing through a challenge, and even the name Maverick being unorthodox and independent and things like that, and giving Pete Mitchell by civilian name a call sign of Maverick, and that he beats to his own drum, and that he has to, his goals were to be in this elite school, and he is the offspring of a famous like unorthodox fighter pilot too, who was lost in battle, and that angst that he has to go through, and that ghost that he's fighting with in the air as his dad, and the relationship that his like late dad has with the instructor, the commander of Top Gun school. Like all of this is coming to this head of this individual is going through life with these blinders on of like, he has no rules, he does whatever the F he wants, and he's going to conquer what he wants to conquer. But in the meantime, he has to learn how to work within the system, and he has to learn more about himself. He has to learn what it means to have that empathy for, other people around him, including his best friend that, spoiler alert, he lost because of his ego. you know, and that's something that somebody has to really realize, like, early on in life, like, who do you want to be and how do you want to adapt to that? Like, you can be the, like, no rules maverick, you know, but it's going to come with a lot of hardship. Or you can be the, like, complacent, go along with the flow, and that will also have its own hardship because you'll just wind up being, like, bulldozed by the Mavericks. So, like, where do you fit in your life story, and how do you want to go through it? And so, and I will say, like, I know some of the backstory of, like, Tony Scott, the director, wanted to write this like a rock concert, and so even that opening of the Top Gun anthem that transitions to Kenny Loggins, who wrote Danger Zone specifically for, you know, Tony Scott for the Top Gun movie. Berlin was originally an alt rock punk band, never did anything ballad, but had to force themselves into writing this power ballad that has now become, like, the only song that gets requested of their band now to date. And they hate that they have to keep playing that, because that wasn't what they really represented, but they did it for the storyline of the movie, which was based on the direction of this, you know, director, Tony Scott, late Tony Scott. Yeah. He actually, so Top Gun is based in Miramar, which is Southern California, right outside of San Diego. And I've been to San Diego a few times, and the scene where they play the piano in the bar is called Kansas City Barbecue in San Diego. And so Tony Scott would go there a lot for drinks and everything, and he decided he wanted to have a whole scene there. So I've been to that bar, and
wow.
I've been at the piano and everything, and it's a very, like, I'm glad, Sophie, you mentioned, you know, this sort of opening scene and the recognizability of Danger Zone, and setting that establishing shot of, like, but also establishing audio of what this movie is going to represent is going to be power, you know, and power and adrenaline and power struggles, you know, power struggles with the main character and his late father and his instructor. And, you know, the fact that he, like, illegally flies by a tower, and it pisses off the, like, I don't know, air traffic control because he spills his coffee. Like, it's all this, like, comic relief of, like, power struggles, which is a natural course of life, right? Like, we have to go through this, like, who am I? Who do I represent? And, you know, what is my mission?
There's two things to take from that is the fact that there's a, what you were saying about before, like, power struggle. I feel like there is quite a lot of, obviously, masculinity going through this in various scenes, you know, like when they're playing the volleyball. And obviously it's like the very competitive nature of all that and everything. And then and from that, there's also the when, especially like when in the locker rooms, like getting told off by the superiors and everything, it almost feels like a high school drama type of thing, you know, like we say about wanting to like, you know, find yourself, you know, like when you're in your high school, you kind of like, you don't know who you are and who you're going to be, sort of thing. So there's kind of like that level of connectivity between that, I think.
Definitely, and I think it's an ego thing. So I quite like Maverick's character because he does a little bit of a full circle with his development. So he starts off being one of those characters that it could grate on your nerves because he's quite selfish and involved in what he wants and how it goes. And I think it takes a massive shock of Goose, which that is when I did tear up. I actually felt for Maverick and the fact that I didn't want Goose to die at all, especially since he's got a family, he's got kids, and we see his wife Meg Ryan as well. Yeah. And you see that little relationship, and Maverick, is his family. So you kind of feel bad for Goose and his family, but also for Maverick because that's the only person he really relied on. And I think it took that for him to realise he needed to grow up, he needed to accept responsibility and kind of realise that sometimes his actions can cause bad outcomes. It's not just like being cocky and getting away with things.
Yeah, he has the smugness at the beginning of the film, especially when he thinks he can just walk into the girls' bathroom to chat up Charlotte at the beginning, thinking, if that was in today's world, you'd be out on your ass.
But I mean, that's all like full circle. Also, the point of, in this day and age, I have so many thoughts running through my head. Sophie, you bring up the masculinity of it, and Paul, you said like even scenes of locker rooms and sports and just the dialogue or the masculinity of assertiveness in a women's bathroom, the inappropriateness of it and things like that. And even in a more grand scale of media and entertainment has been very masculine, and I struggle with this concept as a female in media and entertainment too, because I recognize that like I have been heavily, impressed upon by the masculinity of the industry, and I know that is, something that I'm trying to change, in my microcosm of what I can, and I recognize it in Hollywood too. But for the time and the era and everything, what was, socially acceptable for masculinity, yes, that was heavily represented, and recognizing that like even in the inverse, if this was heavily feminine or heavily, gender neutral even, but just the assertiveness of what the movie represents, it's a very novel storyline of almost aggression, that needs to, maybe it's in all of us that we have to say like, sure, we want to be the no F's given and go through life like with lawlessness and no boundaries, and we don't want to be told what to do, and we don't want to see what the rules are, because rules are for people who don't know how to break them was maybe a mantra of mine at some point. But like who does it affect, in the meantime? What is the damage in your wake, and what could it ultimately cause? And even have Meg Ryan recognize at one point in the when she's mourning the loss of her husband, and the father of her child, she still recognizes that everything that her husband loved was being with this renegade, and that's what made Goose happy, was to be with Maverick at any cost, and so look at it for, is there this sort of like drive in all of us, and how do we harness it and meter it and put it towards good, instead of having the damage that could ensue.
Definitely, I agree completely, and I think it works quite well with the masculinity, because we also get a really strong female role within Charlotte, even though it opens where he's trying to smooth her within the bar, and he doesn't realize who she is, which I think is quite funny, because he kind of goes a little bit embarrassed and a bit vulnerable when she walks in all dressed up, higher authority ranking, and you can see his face like, oh gosh, he puts his sunglasses on like he's embarrassed, and he knows he's kind of overpassed that level. And I love the fact that a woman is in the authority of walking into that room, being amazing, and then kind of looking at him like, yeah, I was that person you tried to pick up last night. So you thought they were acceptable, but now you're looking at me like you've overpassed the mark.
Yeah. And that bit also is a bit like a classroom as well, isn't she? Like come to the teaching them about the stuff, and then obviously he's making jokes and stuff. So it's kind of like, like a naughty school kid would do as well. So I kind of find that a bit amusing as well. But you're right about her being sort of like a good, strong female-led character, really. Although she just kind of like sort of quickly drop into the, oh well, the charm's working on me a little bit, really. So then there's kind of, so I would have kind of preferred it if maybe, I'm guessing obviously because of the time, it maybe, they need some sort of romance element to it and to show that. But I think I would have preferred, if I was to edit something about it, would be to maybe have it just up until almost the very end, like just when at the end of the bar, kind of like that being the moment where they're kind of like, oh, now we're together, kind of thing. Like, right, you have grown, you have matured, not just be falling into his arms because he's a nice guy that I'm somehow interested in. Which, if I was to change something else, I think I would probably change I don't know who I'd have. Obviously, I don't know who else was a big star at the time and was young enough to play Maverick. But I think I probably would like the film a little bit more if it wasn't Tom Cruise in the title, because looking at everything else, it is pretty enjoyable overall in terms of, like, I can see what for the time. Obviously, is an 80s movie.
Mm-hmm.
That's there's no doubt about it. It's of its time and everything, but it really does kind of like make you feel engaged, really, with all the action set pieces it got going for it. Seems to be paced fairly well, because obviously you have your flight going on, and then you have your quiet moments when they're back on the ground to reflect on what they've kind of just done in terms of, like, oh, why did you do that, or what were you thinking when this happened, or we won we passed the test, or whatever, those kind of things. So with that, but I think the romance bit is a bit for me. But
I know it is, and again, I go back to, like, I don't know what my parents were thinking, allowing me to be a grade school kid watching, for my own kids. I'm definitely like, for the content that I know is out there in today's day and age, I have benchmarks of, you will not consume this type of content at this age, for sure. I don't know what my parents were thinking. Between the, like, action and dialogue, the very adult dialogue, even without expletives, and then the romance, it's unnecessary. And I'm glad you bring up that point, because even there's a line where Kelly McGillis has Charlotte Blackwell has this line of, I see 20 new hot shots every 8 weeks. What makes you think that you're any different? And it's, again, going back to the circumstance of, and Sophie, I love your point about this, that you have a strong female character. And so why weaken her by putting her in this romantic situation? Like, she has to deal with, and I think this is the epitome of what power females are going through anyhow. Like, we're always constantly seeing, the mavericks, everywhere in every day and age, whether it be at a stoplight, somebody who's angry with, somebody's driving, or road rage, or whatever it is, to the supermarket, to the presidents, and prime ministers sometimes, like these, like, hothead mavericks that power females are constantly trying to, interact with and meet her. And so, yeah, I think the romance part of it was unnecessary, but I guess for an 80s movie, it needed it, maybe. I don't know. We could ask Tony in the afterlife someday. She could have had a whole different storyline. It just might have not been appropriate for the time, but I'd love to rewrite it if it was for today. And I know with the sequel, I'm sure there's a female character, but it's probably going to be yet another, like, romantic interest, because that's how it's going to be in a Tom Cruise movie. Would it be Matthew Broderick? Would have been a better Maverick?
Oh God, no. He's even worse, I think. Obviously, on the top, talk briefly on the upcoming film. Do you think that, obviously, you said before about there wasn't much use of CGI in Tony Scott's film? This was obviously in the 80s. Do you think that there's going to be, like, quite a reliance on that, considering how most modern films kind of like, oh, this is just to cut corners a little bit and just use effects to make it look like, someone might be flying the plane, or explosion, like something like that kind of thing? Is that something that maybe worries you if you're going to go see it?
I mean, it doesn't worry me. I think it's going to happen. I think it's inevitable. I mean, it's just, even with the trailer, I've already know it exists, and it's, some of the things are just not possible.
Right, okay.
And I do think, though, that maybe just with every action franchise like Fast and Furious, James Bonds, they have the ability to keep building, because with the success of one production allows for bigger production budgets. And so you can go and have more extreme shots, real shots, but you can also have more extreme effects too, so it just gets more and more extreme. And I can only imagine, different than like Fast and Furious franchise just stands out in my mind, because every time I watch it, I'm like, oh, this is getting ridiculous, but I'll watch the next one, so I can only imagine, like, when you have 30 years to, produce a sequel, and it has such a like cultural phenomenon following from the first one in 1986. Like, I can only imagine how extreme it's going to be.
True. Yeah. I don't know if it's going to be like we recently reviewed Indiana Jones, and that was obviously most of that was set in the 80s, and then there was the later one they did Crystal Skull, and it's like, is that too long of a gap between the films to have, like, think, Harrison Ford's getting old now, Tom Cruise is in his 60s now?
I think 50s.
Or late 50s.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he's like, he's going to be more subdued now, or is he still going to be doing his own stunts in a sense? Obviously, he's kind of in the plane. He's not going to be. I don't think he's going to be like Mission Impossible, where he's kind of hanging off the edge of the plane as it's flying along or something, because that would be ridiculous. But I don't know as to what to expect. I am maybe kind of intrigued if it was obviously not going, maybe not see in the cinema. Obviously, that's
you're not
really
going to pay for it. Is that what you're saying?
But if it would come out on, like, digital release on Netflix or something in the future, then I'd probably, okay, let's see what this is. It was like a bit like with with this kind of like, we sadly we had good intentions to watch it on what a service we've got called Now TV. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. It's through like Sky Cinema and stuff like that. But lo and behold, on that day, when we wanted to watch it before, so was getting ready to go on a little trip away, the internet was playing up. I was like, oh, this is great. But I had the hindsight to do this on the morning of this occurring, was when I went into my local like supermarket and picked up like a cheap copy of the DVD version of the film. So I'm thinking, just in case something happens, because we've had a bit of a spotty internet connection these past few weeks, I'll get it in just in case. And lo and behold, it kind of like happened. So I was like, okay, well, at least we've got a hard physical media, and that's what you can always rely on. That it doesn't let you down. Did
it pain you to pay for it?
It's only a couple of quid, so it wasn't too bad. It was like 15, 20 or something like that. So it's okay.
Paul, save that DVD forever. I'm glad you did it. Even if you resent having it, one day when we meet, I'll sign it for you, saying I'm so glad you bought this. It's really important for me.
Yeah,
I'm glad you did it.
I'll keep the case. Yeah. But no, it's definitely something I think I might go back to and check out again. I don't think it's something I'd be like, right, that I'm never going to watch this ever again type of thing. So that's
a good sign.
That's an approval of that. Nothing I'd be like, oh, I must watch this immediately type of thing. But obviously something to come back to, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's got value for it. Just going back to the new film that's coming out, is Tom Cruise directing that? Why did I think that? Or has he got any involvement within how it's going?
I don't know who the director is, actually.
Because all I'm thinking is Mission Impossible straight away in my head, that it's going to go down that route of being obviously flashier, bigger. And I think Tom Cruise will play a biggish part. Obviously, it's coming in with Goose's son, isn't it? I'm thinking that's the interaction.
Yeah, the tie-in back to it.
But I do think he's going to have a main part. I do know, however, Charlotte isn't in the film. So she's not a character. So they're not doing like what Indiana Jones did, where they brought in
Marion from the first one, yeah.
Yeah. And I think she declined, sadly, did Charlotte. She didn't think she was suitable for the role anymore because she'd aged. It's like, that's not a thing, but that just shows what Hollywood is, doesn't it?
Yeah. Some people age better than others, I suppose.
She's also she's out. She's a lesbian, so she's maybe she doesn't want to have like this sort of conflicting, romantic interest on camera that is not a true representation of her. She lives in Key West. I've seen her, like from afar, because I have been in Key West at the same time, and she was there, and I was like, that's Kelly McGillis, So I was being a little bit of a fangirl.
Didn't you go and approach her and go, "Can I have your autograph?"
No, I don't do that. I don't do that. Joseph Kosinski is the director. I'll bet you Tom Cruise in some capacity
He'd be like
financed it, or something, Yeah, he probably had some say. Lady Gaga is going to be in it for music, I guess.
Okay.
Jennifer Connelly, John Hamm from Mad Men.
Yep. Cool.
Ed Harris, Val Kilmer, which speaking of not aged well.
Yeah.
He's gone through some. He's had a rough go of it, and throat cancer and everything. So just his physique is visibly different. So yeah. Sophie, would you watch it again?
I would. Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and my mum loved it. So she's been wanting Paul to watch Tom Cruise, Top Gun forever. So she's a big fan of Top Gun, and she was like, just get past the Tom Cruise part, you'll really enjoy it. It's a good storyline. And she's been beating the drum, and then Sharon, you were like, I want to cover Top Gun, and then we were like, yes.
No excuse, yeah. So yeah,
we pinned you down.
Yeah, but I've got to say, overall, yeah, it's you get past the Tom Cruise part on my part, and it's pretty solid as a film. As a solid action film from the time it was made for.
Yeah. I do think I would love Goose to still be around, because I think him as a character as a whole, he was just a lovable character that was for Maverick, and that I did have a tear jerk moment. And I know obviously it probably for the film would be better. You always say this to me, like it does make it more impactful.
Because I kind of saw that coming a little bit. Obviously, I knew like something bad was going to happen. It's like, oh, he's a family man. He's got a lot more to lose than Tom does. So I kind of figured there's going to be some dramatic moment, and poor Goose was the one who got it, really.
And drama over nothingness. It was just a routine drill, and the plane, so it makes you really think about like, what am I fighting for in a metaphorical sense? Like, and in every situation, is this worth the fight?
Sure.
Because if it was just a routine drill, and all of that adrenaline went towards ego and things like that cause that much like significant damage, like it's such a weird, for story, Paul, you're right, like something bad was going to happen, and that's what makes a good story. But it is somewhat life lesson, like pick your battles is an idiom, so
definitely. And I think it shows towards the end when they kind of sort of graduate from the Top Gun and they've become like the elite pilots that they wanted, and then literally they're celebrating, enjoying alcohol and champagne, and then they're like, right, you've got a mission now. And it's like, what? Can we not embrace the moment of enjoying our celebration? And it just shows how urgency of, right, we've got to fight now. And you can see the reality sink in of, right, this is for real. It's not like a test or a game anymore, or a bit of fun. This is reality. Somebody could actually get hurt. And you see that tone. And for Maverick's character there, he's really struggling because obviously he doesn't have Goose. He's kind of lost Charlotte in a sense as well.
Yeah, he's kind of like how is it Cougar at the beginning of the film was having a bit of a meltdown kind of thing. It's obviously that coming back into play with her, like, oh, he's struggling to get to grips with the whole situation. Is he gonna like choke on whether he's gonna do it or not? And then obviously yes, he pulls through, because that's how it's gonna end. He's not gonna be like, well, he just gives up and that's the film kind of thing. That's not what you'd want in the audience would be like, boo. This isn't what we asked for.
Any predictions for the next one on what the major conflict's going to be?
I don't know if it obviously we've got Val Kilmer coming back as Iceman. I don't know if there's, and at the end of the film he says, "Oh, you can be my wingman." If there's still that dynamic going on, like a friendly banter, or whether they've kind of like gotten distant between one another, or they're kind of like, oh, here's my other instructor who's like still working at Top Gun or what. I don't know. There might be that, but there's got to be something, or maybe it's just the young blood who's having a bit more of a fighting spat or something. I don't know. Perhaps.
That's interesting, because I think Goose's son is obviously going to be a little bit more down to earth. I think he'll know how his father obviously passed away. He'll want to be in his father's footsteps, but there might be a bit of resentment towards Maverick at such a young age, losing your father. And you could kind of blame Maverick for that. So he's either going to go as a father figure to him, or there's the resentment that could lay there as well of what
possibly.
Have they told this child that how his father has not been around? Did they actually tell him the story? So I think there's maybe something on the lines of that.
You think Goose's son lives?
It goes the same way as his father, bashing their down the route.
No,
I don't know. Maybe that'd be too on the nose, perhaps.
They won't kill Maverick off, though. I don't think. That would be interesting.
Now that would be interesting.
But that won't happen.
Not in like I waited for this day to happen kind of way.
Yeah, I mean, it could be the finale, the grand finale, like the quid pro quo of like there's a Goose's son versus Maverick who lives, and maybe Tom Cruise has to make the decision.
Yeah, perhaps maybe.
For Food Fight, we do a lot of work just based on Donald Miller's teaching of story arc. And so from a problem standpoint, every movie has an external, internal, and philosophical problem for the hero. And so I want to imagine, like, what do we think Maverick's external, internal, and philosophical problem is for this sequel?
It's interesting.
If you were to write the story, Sophie, now that you've seen the first one, what would you say?
I think obviously he's going to be an instructor. He's going to get kind of his goals. He's going to be at the top of his game, and then wanting to pass on his knowledge.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the outlook. And then it depends on if his ego is still there. I think that's where it will lie. If the younger inner Maverick comes out, or if he actually did learn anything by the end of it.
Yeah, you'd kind of think that it would be like, oh, I was once like you to Goose's son, if that's the case, or whoever he's teaching, whoever turns out to be a hothead. You'd kind of hope that he'd be like, no, don't make the same mistakes that I did, type of...
Being like a coach or a mentor to somebody.
I imagine that's probably how that would go.
All right, we will see. All right, so you won't see it in the theater. You'll wait until it comes out.
Yeah, I think so. What about you, Sharon? Are you going to go next time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I was asked this morning if I have tickets yet, and I was a little disappointed because I was in my whole getup for today's recording, and I thought my husband was taking care of the tickets, because he said he would.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh yeah, I have to go and get tickets," and I was like, "What? You haven't gotten tickets yet?" So I might have to take matters into my own hands.
Oh no. Okay. Well, I might just go without you. And then I'll take my mum.
Yeah, take your mom.
I think that's what we might do. Yeah. And then we'll let you know how great it was and that you missed out.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you do manage to get tickets, Sharon. I don't know how busy it is with like cinemas with this current climate with getting cinema tickets.
I mean, it's Florida. It's lawless. People just go and go wherever they want.
Right.
Yeah.
Sneak
in. I might pirate the movie for you if you want it. That could happen. I'll live stream it. I can give you a monologue, not that you have to use it, but I want to see how fresh it is, because you brought up Cougar and Cougar cracking at the beginning and Maverick being all high and mighty about it. Ready?
Yeah.
Maverick, you just did an incredibly brave thing. What you should have done was land that plane. You don't own that plane, the taxpayers do. Son, your ego's writing checks your body can't cash. You've been busted, you lost your qualifications as section leader 2 times, put in hack twice by me. Actually 3 times, put in hack twice by me, sorry. Redo. With a history of high-speed passes over 5 air-controlled towers and 1 admiral's daughter. And you, asshole, you're lucky to be here. Thank you, sir. And let's not bullshit, Maverick. Your family name ain't the best in the Navy. You better be doing it better and cleaner than the rest of them. Now, what is it with you? Just want to serve my country and be the best fighter pilot in the Navy. Sir, don't screw around with me, Maverick. You're a hell of an instinctive pilot. Maybe too good. I'd like to bust your butt, but I can't. I got another problem here. I got to send somebody from this squadron to Miramar. I got to do something here. I still can't believe it. I got to send you up against the best. You 2 characters are going to Top Gun. For 5 weeks, you're going to fly against the best fighter pilots in the world. You were number 2. Cougar was number 1. Cougar lost it and turned in his wings. You guys are number 1. But you listen to me. You screw up just this much, you'll be flying a cargo plane full of rubber dog shit out of a Hong Kong. Scene.
That was brilliant.
That was amazing.
Yay. No, I was a little dusty. Dusty.
Yeah, no, I do remember most of that. I obviously think about like those little moments, obviously, when they're in the office and stuff. So that's pretty good. Yeah, well done for memorizing all that, because that's quite a long scene to memorize. But
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
But it is that idea and that impression that I had as a young kid of like, if I don't go by the rules, then there's going to be somebody who's going to tell me I screwed up, but they'll still give me the pass. Like, okay, go ahead, go learn your lesson and go on to the next thing. So
yeah, that's cool. Right. Well, on that, we will go to the scoring. So the way we do this, Sharon, is we do out of 10, and you can do 0.5s or point whatever, however you want to do it, but obviously 1 being the lowest and 10 being the highest. So we'll start with you.
Okay. Well, I will be biased and critical, but also nostalgic, and give it a solid 10.
I thought she would.
I thought so. Yeah.
I love it when we get a 10 from a guest.
Sophie, what would you?
So I've been toying with 2 different figures, and I always love it when we have a guest that is so passionate about a film that you kind of get insights that you may not have seen, because obviously this is the first time we've watched it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things where you're going to miss something because you're just taking it for what it is, and then you rewatch it and then you see something else. And I think that's what's lovely about watching films. There's never something that you're seeing all straight away at the first time of a glance. So storyline, obviously we've got some little bits of, yeah, that wouldn't be acceptable today. But if you take it for it being in the 80s and for what it is, and if I was going to have watched it at that time, then it would have been acceptable.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to...
Like that song, The Acceptable in the 80s.
Didn't know that was a song.
It is now.
Yeah. So I think, to be fair, I can't downgrade it for that. So it's going to be a solid 8 from me. And now Paul is going to be the horrible judge. It's like having it on the X Factor or The Voice, isn't it? You're the mean one.
You're the Simon Cowell.
Yeah.
Yes.
Simon Scowl.
Yeah. 2-star. No, I'm joking.
Okay.
No. Overall, I got to say I did enjoy it more than I thought I would, so I can't fault it for that. And the points I brought up about before, like certain elements of the story were a bit with that, but it was over the action was kind of what you're really there for, to be honest, and you want that from this kind of movie. So Tony Scott did a good job with that. And if we could, anybody else, I think, instead of Tom Cruise, I think, because some of those moments I mentioned about before, like when he's very much interested in Charlotte's character, and he I don't know if maybe it's just when he was younger, but he always had this like really intense stare going on.
It's a smugness, isn't it?
As well, I think there's that. So that kind of.
But how baby-faced was Tom Cruise? It was really strange to see a baby-faced Tom Cruise, because I'm used to older Mission Impossibles and such like that. So I was like, I know obviously, yeah, you grow up, but it just seemed really strange to see him that young.
Mm-hmm. But to my score, at this moment in time, could go up, maybe.
You're really putting us in suspense here.
I know.
No, I mean, if this was a fighter pilot scene, everybody would be shot by now. So
okay. I'm going with 7.
Oh, okay. I'm happy about that.
Is that acceptable, awesome. Sharon?
Yeah. All right. If dreams come true, Paul, for Halloween, we're all gonna fight. Dress up as fighter pilots. I'll get you the suit and everything. Cool. You're gonna get in character.
Yes.
I think you could rock it. What do you think, Sophie? Would it be hot?
Yeah, definitely.
In a fighter pilot suit.
We'll even have Maverick as a little name tag for you, Paul. By then, you'll love him so much as a character.
Well, thank you very much, Sharon, for joining us on this episode. It's been great to talk about this in a very critical way. So I hope you've had fun talking about it.
I love you guys. Thank you. I had so much fun. I love it. It's very rare that I get to talk about Top Gun. Actually, not rare. Almost every day. So
I really enjoyed you being on our podcast. I love the fact that Paul has such a wonderful company that he works for with Food Fight Studios, that we've had obviously John on, we've had Sharon now, and there's just so many people that I get to meet now from your work, which is just wonderful. And if anyone doesn't know, do you want to give a bit of Food Fight Studio? I know we've done it on, what did we watch with John now? That weird...
Willow.
That weird
appreciate
film.
that, Willow. The weird film.
Do you want to plug Food Fight as well while we're here? We might as well.
Sharon can. She's the one who's more for that kind of promotion kind of side of things, I think.
Sure. Food Fight Studios is an unconventional animation production company that's doing short form animation and beyond for digital entrepreneurs like SP Film Viewers and other podcasters. Call us. Documentaries too. We've won some awards for that. So if you're a documentary director, speaking of SP Film Viewers, new films that are coming out, if you need some interstitial animations, Paul will be your guy. He's going to do the animations for you. So give us a call.
Cool. Thank you for that, Sharon. And thank you once again for joining us.
All right. Sharon, signing off.
Thank you very much for listening to this episode. And if you want to check out all our other episodes, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, Good Pods, Podchaser, and pretty much wherever else you might get your podcasts from.
If you do want to have a look at any of the content or follow us on Twitter or Instagram under the handle SP_film viewers, then definitely come on over there and either give us a like, share us around, give us a nice comment, or any other films you want us to review. We can try and put those in the pipeline too.
I think with that being said, we will speak to you next time.
Speak to you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.